Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. We are back after doing one episode last week because of the Packers bye week. Back to doing two this week, one pregame, one postgame, just like every week. And I am here, as always, with my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how are you doing?
All right, resting up from the bye week, recovering from injuries.
I'm ready to watch Green Bay Packers football all over again.
Yes, by injuries we mean psychological damage from watching the Packers earlier in the season.
Yep, I just needed 1 week off and I'm back in, folks. Let's do this thing. But anyway, the Packers will be playing...
Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Pull me back in. The Packers will be playing the Rams on Monday Night Football this week. It's going to be an interesting game. I actually was thinking to myself, this might be the second easiest matchup they've had this year, but we're going to break it all down here for you. We're going to talk about some injury notes. We're going to talk about how the Rams match up with the Packers, how the Packers match up with the Rams, etc., etc. Everything we do normally here. But quick, we wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you enjoy what you hear, come give us a follow on Twitter, @FatherSonPacker. That's where we tweet out when we have new episodes, any Packers news we find interesting, injury notes, etc., etc. And if you really like what you hear, come subscribe to us on YouTube. It would really help our numbers. Father Son Packers podcast on YouTube. Come give us a subscribe. Hit that ad button. You know what they say. It would just help us so much. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google Podcasts, etc., etc. But yeah, we would really appreciate it if you enjoy what you're listening to. And we do pre-games and post-games every single week. We'll be doing an episode a week during the offseason talking about the draft and other moves the Packers are doing. But for now, let's get down to this Rams game, Dad. Do you want to start with a couple generic news and notes?
Sure. I guess I'll go. So, we had Caleb Jones was out for a while, and we're like, what's going on?
On the NFI list.
How are you out so far with an illness? Well, it turns out it was mono, which can knock you out for quite a while.
Do it.
You can't even practice or anything because you're at a risk of a ruptured spleen.
Yep.
While you're recovering from mono.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. And it'll be nice to have him back, especially with it seems like Bakhtiari's going to be missing time, and it's always good to have a little more tackle depth. And never know, they might need it.
And also I feel like Caleb Jones, I think what the Packers are hoping that he'll follow the same career path as Josh Nijman.
Yep, yeah. I can see it.
I think that's the hope.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens.
Beyond that, we are recording this here on Thursday night, and some just small bit of nugget of hope for anyone who's still out there with a real positive mental attitude. With the Seahawks losing to the 49ers, the Packers' playoff chances have risen to 13.3% per Austin Mock of The Athletic on Twitter, as retweeted by Matt Schneidman. So, if you're looking for a little more hope this holiday season, they're more in it than they were before this game happened.
The
Seahawks losing was good for them.
Less dead than they were a week ago.
Yep, 1 in 10, yet. 1 in 10 is not bad.
And we talked about playoff scenarios last time, and a couple of things have happened in the Packers' favor. I mean, they had, in terms of getting ahead of the Seahawks.
Seahawks have dropped 2 now. Yep.
And they've dropped 2 to NFC opponents.
Mm-hmm. It's very good for the Packers.
For the Packers to finish ahead of them, if the Packers win out, they only need the Seahawks to lose 1 of their last 3. It doesn't matter which one anymore.
Yep, and then they just need to catch 1 of the Giants or Commanders.
Right.
It's not impossible. The hardest part is going to be winning out.
And then easily the hardest part. They don't need some crazy wild scenarios to happen for the Panthers or the Lions to finish ahead of them by some of the teams the Packers beat going completely in the tank to ruin their strength of schedule, as it were.
Exactly. And you never know. You never know.
You all you want is an invitation to the dance. Then see what kind of dance moves you got after you get there.
Exactly. And step 1 of getting that invitation to the dance would be winning this game versus the Rams. So let's start breaking that down like we do in all our pregames with the injury report. Now, I just want to preface this with, because this is a Monday night game and we're recording here on Thursday, this Thursday injury report is the equivalent of a usual Wednesday report, which, for the most part, are not super informative. A lot of players are given rest on Wednesdays, and so for Mondays, they're given rest on Thursdays. So just keep that in mind as we read these off. But for the Packers, David Bakhtiari was a DNP, didn't practice for his knee and his appendectomy. I would be a little surprised if we saw him back this year. I think they might just shut him down. Elton Jenkins was a DNP with a
just
knee.
Say about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even LaFleur saying, I don't know how long this takes. I've never had a player do this before. I don't know what to expect. And often these like abdominal surgeries can take like a month or more to recover from, depending on how extensive it was, how much they had to cut open. For abdominal surgery can take a while. So it may be that he'll be out through the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. And then beyond that, Elton Jenkins was a DNP with his knee. I think that's kind of the usual for him. Aaron Jones was limited with an ankle injury. I feel pretty okay about him, given that this is like the equivalent of a Wednesday. They're probably just taking it easy with him. And then everyone else was a full participant, including Rodgers, Savage, Dobbs, and Enagbare. I think the most notable of those is Savage. I would have not been surprised if he was going to be out extended time. And the most exciting of those is Dobbs, because it's going to be really fun to see Dobbs and Watson on the fields again, because we haven't gotten to see much of it. Dad,
when
any
thoughts
on the Packers injury report?
Well, one other thing to mention besides the Bakhtiari is Rodgers is also apparently not taping his thumb up anymore.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, somebody said that his thumb was not taped in practice. I believe was the report. So that could be the thumb's getting better.
Maybe. Or it was a really slow day.
We'll see. So all of a sudden, the Packers are going to be slinging it all over the place and scoring 75 points per game.
Did the line change when that news about his thumb not being taped come out? Did we get like a percentage?
I haven't been following.
Point bump?
Do you have like a ticker tape of the line for every news item?
No tape's at least a 0.5 percentage point in the playoff odds. It's got to be at least a 0.5%. Anyway, on to the Rams side of the injury report. They are pretty dinged up right now. Aside from the fact that they have Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, and Matthew Stafford on IR, who will not be playing in this game. Aaron Donald, you may have heard of him, is very good, was a DNP here on Thursday for his ankle, and he also didn't play last week. Him playing or not playing is going to be very impactful on the outcome of this game. Beyond that, Brian Allen, their starting center, was a DNP with a knee. Marquise Copeland, another one of their defensive tackles, didn't practice with a ankle injury. Travin Howard, was also a DNP with a hip injury. He's one of their linebackers. David Long Jr., one of the defensive backs with a groin injury, didn't practice. John Walford, one of their other quarterbacks with a neck injury, didn't practice. Ernest Jones, one of their linebackers, was a limited participant with a wrist injury. Terrell Lewis, one of their other linebackers, was a limited participant with a back injury. And then Robert Rochelle, another one of the defensive backs, was a limited participant with a wrist injury. So all in all, if you weren't keeping track, it's 3 linebackers, 2 defensive tackles, and 2 defensive backs that are dinged up for the Rams, amongst a few others. So really that interior of their defense is getting hit pretty hard by injury this week, if this Thursday report is any indication.
Yeah, we have a case where the opponent has a bigger injury laundry list than the Packers, and plus the players they've lost for the year. Well, it looks like the year Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp. So already their receiver room is a mess.
Receiver room's a mess. They don't have the starting quarterback. Yeah, exactly. They don't have the starting quarterback. They
or their backup quarterback.
Exactly. You just go down the line. They're really dinged up. And Jordan Fuller, one of their starting safeties, has been on IR for a while. It's been a really tough go of it for the Rams this year. So maybe we should start with what's going on in Rams world, since we're kind of already on that topic. Or do you want to start with blast from the past? How are you feeling?
It could go either way. So
all right, take us away. Take us away with whichever you want to go with first.
Okay, so let's go on with what's going on. So, as you said, like the Rams have had like an epic fall from the Super Bowl winner. Often you talk about Super Bowl hangover from the team that has like finished runner up and then really struggled the next year. But this year, it's the Rams as the Super Bowl winner who have been just a mess with just a 4-9 record. One of the most disappointing teams of the year, even more so than the Packers with how bad they've been. Stafford's out with a neck injury, and now there's all kinds of speculation starting about what's going on. Are they getting Baker Mayfield because maybe Stafford's going to retire because he's worried about the long-term consequences of his neck injury? And then it's time like last year, like, well, maybe McVay will decide to retire and be an announcer, or maybe Aaron Donald will retire, like he talked about after last year.
I was just about to say. He's been thinking about retirement. He said he's accomplished everything he ever needed to, and he's not entirely wrong. So,
yep. And other things going on is, speaking of Baker Mayfield, they just claimed him off of waivers last week. And so my first thought was, did they just do this?
He just played really well. Well, not really well. He won the game versus the Raiders, a game that no one gave him any prayer of winning because he had 2 days of practice.
The other thing is, like, did they just do this so the Niners couldn't get him? Which I wouldn't put past them. But then Baker comes in, basically plays the starter minutes, so he didn't come in for like the first series or so, and leads a 98-yard drive for a game-winning touchdown with 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I will say I think it does say a little bit more about the Raiders than it does about Baker. Baker was the third string. He was the third string on the Panthers for a reason, is all I'm going to say. There's a reason.
My note of this game, that he immediately comes in and wins a game, or Las Vegas loses a game for him, which, if that sack is left to stand instead of having a roughing the passer penalty, then that comeback drive never happens.
I mean, there's a million ways the Raiders screwed that up. I mean, slapping the ball out of a player's hands and getting a unsportsmanlike conduct 15-yard penalty like late in the game. Just what are we doing here? I mean, it's really tough for the Raiders, but we're not here to talk about them. We're here to talk about the Rams. So that's kind of what's going on in Rams world. Did you have anything else there? Should we talk about the last time we played?
That was the main thing. The big thing is the changes in like the how much they've underperformed, how much they hit by injuries, and how much they've got their. Now they've added a third number 1 overall pick quarterback.
Yeah.
In a row, and so is Baker Mayfield going to end up bringing the Rams to a Super Bowl at some point?
I mean, it's wild, but a lot of people have said that. I mean, the Rams are 4-9. People have asked, is this the worst defense of a Super Bowl? Like in recent memory? When's the last time a team has struggled this much coming off a Super Bowl?
Coming off the win. You often hear these
coming
stories
off a
about
win.
the team that loses the Super Bowl, having a hangover, but usually not a Super Bowl winner having a hangover like this. But so then we could talk about the
last time we played them, which was just last year.
From the past. Just last November, the Green Bay won kind of 36-28 in a high-scoring affair, which seems unlikely this time around, given.
And I will say, 36-28
this year.
It was not that close. They kicked a field goal to make it an 8-point game, and then had the onside kick to try and then score a touchdown and then get a 2-point. Like it was, the Packers firmly controlled that game for almost the whole game.
Yes, it was one of those where it kind of was a pseudo one-score game.
Yeah.
At the very, very end.
A backdoor one-score game cover is what it was, really.
Right. So this was the game where, so in this game, Rodgers had 307 yards, 2 TDs. Adams had 104 receiving yards. This was the big Cobb game where he had 95 yards and a TD
and immediately got hurt
partway at half. So he's like at halftime, he had 95 yards and a touchdown, and then he got the core muscle injury, which, do you remember the description? What he said about his core muscle injury?
No, what'd he say?
I think it was his injury. Says, felt like my testicles got twisted.
Ugh. I'm glad I forgot that one.
I think that's how he described it. I think I'm remembering the right core muscle injury.
And this was also the game where Douglas pick sixth Matthew Stafford all the way to the house.
Yep, to the house. This is also the game where Rodgers juked Ramsey into outer space, if you believe the memes.
Ah, that was funny. Yes, that was great. And they put the there's a song you always put behind that meme, and I'm forgetting.
I don't know what the song is they have with that meme, but yes, as he's launched into space after falling for that juke. And most of the Rams' production was Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham Jr., Henderson, and Van Jefferson. So only Van Jefferson is playing for the team right now.
I was going to say, it looks very different from the last time we played this team. And I wanted to add, just a little blast from the past, we also played against Baker Mayfield last year on Christmas Day. We played against the Browns, beat them, and Baker Mayfield was picked off 4 times by the Packers, including 2 by Rasul Douglas. So Rasul's got 1 against the Rams last year and 2 against Baker last year. Maybe he'll have 3 against both of them this year. Who knows?
Right. So we got a double good vibe blast from the past.
Double whammy. A little double whammy.
Double whammy.
But anyway, that's kind of our blast from the past, last time we played the Rams, we just like looking back on that because we think it'd be kind of fun. But let's move on to our general thoughts on the game. And let's preface this all with ESPN. Per ESPN, the Packers are a 7-point favorite against the Rams. How do you feel about that line? I feel like it's at home for the Packers. It's in Lambeau, so it feels kind of reasonable.
Gonna maybe get down into single digits during the game. The high is going to be in the low tens, I think, on Monday.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's going to be a cold day out in Lambeau.
To be fair,
maybe they'll depress the overall point totals.
Yeah, Baker's used to the cold. Played in Cleveland. It gets cold in Oklahoma.
Yep. But I felt like going into this game that the Rams were looking like a total train wreck. And
they've been salvaged about this much. People believe in them a bit just because they beat the Raiders. Like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I do think that this is probably the second easiest team on their schedule besides the Bears. Like, just looking back on it now, this might even be easier than it should be. Obviously, knock on wood. I am calling on Zeus himself to strike me down in this moment with how confident I am the Packers can win this game. Not that they will, that they can, because the Rams are so beat up. So which
Zeus are you calling on? Are you calling on Laurence Olivier Zeus, Liam Neeson Zeus, Russell Crowe Zeus?
I was going to say Russell Crowe Zeus,
here?
Old fat Zeus.
Old fat Russell Crowe Zeus.
But the thing is, the Rams weren't good when they were healthy, and now they're really dinged up, and they have no offensive line, and we're going to get all into this. Let's talk about it. So let's start with the positives for the Rams. What makes them a tough matchup?
So for the Rams, what do they have still going for them? I would say, do you want to go first, or I can go on?
Go ahead.
So what I have is that the running game is actually improving a little bit. So they've a lot of the season they haven't been good. So in the last 5 games, the 4 games, Akers been averaging more like 50 yards per game, and 2/3 to 3/4 of a touchdown per game. The Week 14 game itself against the Raiders wasn't so good for him, and it's a Thursday game. Things are kind of wonky often. But his PFF rushing grade from weeks 10 to 14 is up to like 66, so a little bit above average. So he's gone from being not good to a little bit above average. Because he was like below average in the first 9 weeks of the season. And his yards after contact per attempt is up to 3 per carry from in weeks 10 through 14, and before that it was only like 2.3 yards after contact per attempt.
Yeah, he had a really, really rough start to the year.
Right.
It was really bad. I mean, they benched him. They benched him he wanted to leave because it was so bad.
Right. So I looked over, this is from PFF, the numbers, and then I made a cutoff of having at least 5 carries per game. For who to count in these, because we're doing an efficiency metric, that he was in like the bottom 10 of running backs in yards after contact per attempt. And now he's moved up to more like kind of middle of the pack. So he's something that is good enough to exploit a bad running defense. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And
so that's something that I think we have to consider, that maybe they're not so terrible running the ball anymore as they were, and as opposed to they're so bad we don't have to worry that we have a bad running defense.
Yeah, I mean the bar for them and running the ball was really low. I mean they were one of the worst running teams in the entire league. I'm pretty sure they were bottom 5 earlier in the year, and they looked bottom 5 when you watch them play because they couldn't block. They didn't have any running
bottom
backs.
5. They just looked
by
bottom
any metric.
5.
Yes, they just looked bottom 5
as a team. Now, so that's something that to keep an eye on. I think that the running game has gotten respectable. Their run defense is really good, and you may have more of that. I looked at, so according to PFF, they are number 1 run defense.
Yeah, let me touch on their run defense a little bit, because I think this was what I thought was going to make them the toughest matchup. Their defense overall is pretty decent. It's 14th overall by DVOA, which is middle of the pack. Just 23rd against the pass, but like you said, very good against the run, 5th against the run by DVOA, and PFF have them as the first graded run defense. And part of that is they're the third best tackling defense by PFF.
Yeah,
and obviously, PFF grades
they're tackling metrics as well.
Yeah, I mean, their PFF grades aren't perfect, but I just think it goes to show that the Packers are going to have to pass the ball and are going to probably have to throw it down the field because they're not going to be able to run a lot of like quick game to Aaron Jones as much as they usually would. We'll get into how it specifically affects the Packers' game plan. But that was the thing that stood out to me the most, was that their defense, specifically their run defense, is very good by any metric you kind of take a look at. And then the other thing that I had for what makes them a tough matchup is, while the Packers are coming off a bye, the Rams are coming off a mini bye. They're going to have 10 full days since their last game, so it kind of negates the Packers' advantage there that they would normally have.
Right. Instead of having a whole week advantage, you only get like a 4-day advantage. And the Packers have been kind of screwed over this year in terms of
the scheduling's been very tough.
Relative days off.
I mean, we were talking about this the other day. The schedule ended up being a lot harder than people thought it was going to be, because the NFC East and AFC East were way better than anyone thought they would be.
Yeah, and then they also had a lot of bad travel or short rest compared to opponents. Their opponents having
to go to London, having to come back from London,
bye, and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You got to win the games you get, though. Did you have anything else on what made the Rams a tough?
So I noticed a few other little nuggets, in addition to the run defense and the tackling, that despite some of their other struggles in pass defense metrics, their D-line, or the defensive front, is actually number 4 in the league in pass rush win rate per ESPN. And number 2, this fits with the rest of the run stop win rate. So that fits with the other parts of the other metrics that show them as a good run defense. But there's that aspect of the run. The pass defense, their pass rush win rate up front is pretty good. And though if Donald can't play, I think you can.
I was going to say, how much of that metric
take that number down, way down, because he's like the third. He's the third best. I mean, we're talking about a
generational defender. Like, he is one of the greatest defensive players to ever set foot on the football field. I mean, he's going to have a huge impact on any of these metrics that we're talking about in terms of pass rush win rate, et cetera, et cetera.
And I could put a little bit more, So for him, he's the third best D lineman by PFF, and is good against both the run, and is pretty good is well above average against the run, and is elite as a pass rusher, and the number 1 defensive tackle by ESPN's pass rush win rate.
And
so
he's
been sort of
like
the driving force
for
years. For the Packers, for the Rams defense, unless he's going up against Elton Jenkins.
I mean, he was hurt in that game. To be fair to him,
he was coming back early from injury in that game. This is true.
Yes,
but it was still fun.
Beyond that, let's talk a little bit about how these advantages the Rams have specifically kind of play into the Packers. How do we think that the Rams are going to exploit the Packers? Because I have a couple things written down. I think that they should really try to make the Packers one-dimensional, because we've talked a little bit about how good their run defense is. The Packers, I mean, flat out, they struggle when they play against teams that can really stop the run and that can force them into can keep them essentially off schedule by stopping the run. I think that's the biggest effect it has on them. And when you look at 3 of the other top 5 run defenses by DVOA, they're all teams that the Packers lost to. You got the Titans, you got the Bills, and you got the Commanders. So there's a blueprint for teams with very good run defenses being able to beat the Packers. And it should be noted, however, like we said, the Rams' two of the Rams' defensive tackles and 3 of their linebackers are looking a little iffy for this game. So that might have a big effect on their run defense overall.
Yeah. Especially if it's Aaron Donald. The other thing I say about this, blueprint for beating the Packers in terms of having a strong run defense is not a this year only phenomenon. That's been going on for the entire
since
time.
Since LaFleur got here.
Yeah, the entire LaFleur era has been characterized by this struggle against teams that can shut down the run. It just seems to throw the entire offense off schedule.
Yeah, and then the only other thing I had for how the Rams might try to, because let's be honest, I think that the Packers are favored by a full touchdown. I think it's very reasonable. I wouldn't be surprised if that spread gets bet up a little bit. The Rams are really reeling right now. I know they're coming off a win, but it's tough there in LA right now, or as tough as it can be in that weather. But the other thing I have written down is that Sean McVay is generally very good at getting his players in space, even if he doesn't have most of his more dynamic weapons right now. And the Packers are really bad at tackling. They're 19th best tackling team in the league per PFF. And that kind of tracks with the eye test. I mean, we all watched the Eagles game, unfortunately.
Oh, my eyes.
Those are the two things that I have kind of written down as ways the Rams can try and take advantage of the Packers. Did you have anything on that front?
So a little bit, I'd like to say, one thing that is kind of related to what might cause them trouble is I think that the fact that they've added a new quarterback kind of changes how well you can scout what they're going to be doing. So there's a little bit more of the unknown for the Rams offense that may cause some, hopefully only like short-term issues where the Packers don't quite know what the Rams' tendencies are now that they've got a new quarterback in terms of scheming up the defense. And you could
argue that at least they have a game of film. I'm 90% sure that that's not even going to count because Baker wasn't even running the offense, because Baker didn't even know the offense. Baker was out there drawing it on the football like you did with your friends growing up.
Right. I mean, you get your head here. It's like, okay, you go out here and you go 10 steps and go out, and you go like 5 steps and then go in.
Yep. I mean, he had 2 days to learn the offense. I think that game is going to be almost an entire wash from a scouting perspective. I can't imagine they were running anywhere close to even half the playbook.
Yeah. So some other things that I think are going to happen, as you said, I think they're going to try to that they will, as it's improved, they will try to run the ball because that's the obvious weakness. So I think the Rams are going to try to exploit the Packers' weakness by running the ball, even though it's not their own strength. However, it may now be strong enough, and try to get to the second level where the Packers have really struggled in limiting the number of yards per carry, and also to shorten the game with ball control to try to depress the overall score and keep it close enough where they can steal a win at the end. And again, as you said, try to take away the run with their defensive front, though that will be harder if Donald doesn't play.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like there's a lot of it coming down to Donald's health. Sorry, you said you were curious about something?
Oh, and then the other things where, one thing I was thinking about that people mentioned is will they have trouble covering Tutu Atwell, who had a big game last week? And they've had trouble with quick, shifty wide receivers in the slot before. It's more that he's the style of receiver that has given him trouble, not that he's any kind of superstar.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it. He's very fast. He's very tiny.
Right.
The archetype for guarding him would probably be Savage?
Or Jair.
I would not want to... I mean, you could, I guess. I just think...
But he's the kind of player who would give Rasul a lot of trouble, for example, if you put Rasul in the slot. Though now that's less of a thing with Stokes being out. So I don't know how...
Well, how is Keyshawn Nixon going to...
That's what
because it's going to be Keyshawn.
I don't know Keyshawn's weaknesses as well in that regard, whether he has that,
he's almost certainly not that fast. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And the safeties have been overly aggressive and blowing coverages over the top all year long. So I think that's a good call out that Tutu Atwell actually might have a bigger impact on this game than we think.
Yeah. And so then overall, are the Rams going to try to play press man and jam the Green Bay receivers at the line? It was something they had trouble doing earlier in the year, is getting off press man and getting into their routes. That's been less of a problem for Green Bay now with Watson's ascension in the offense. And that now I think that's scaring teams off from coming up so tight at the line. So I'm curious about what they try there to see if they can have any effect on some of the other receivers. But the one thing I'm worried about their offense is, actually maybe the thing I'm most worried about their offense is what Tutu Atwell is going to do.
That's kind of wild. But since you were talking a bit about pressing and the Packers wide receivers kind of maybe hopefully being able to beat press, let's talk a little bit about how we think that the Packers could maybe take advantage of the Rams. And just tying into what you were just ending on, I think the Packers should be able to pass, especially given that this is the first, hopefully, knock on wood, full game that they'll have Dobbs and Watson in their current forms. They should have an exceptional speed advantage for both of them against the Rams secondary. Nick Scott and Jalen Ramsey have decent speed, but Taylor Rapp ran a 4.76 40-yard dash coming out of college, per an interview he did with SiriusXM, and Troy Hill ran a 4.55 per NFL.com. So 2 of their 4 secondary members are pretty slow, or at least certainly very slow compared to the speed the Packers have at the receiver position. So I think that's something where the Packers should certainly be able to take advantage. And, let's see if Christian Watson can continue that streak, because I think this is a matchup where you should be able to.
Yeah, let's see him house one. I could talk more about how. Do you want to add any more to what the advantages?
Did you have anything on the receivers? I had a couple. Things
I had
and
some stuff on the passing game in general, but I could talk about the receivers in particular. So the Rams' coverage in general is not good. They're only 19th per PFF in coverage, so middle of the pack, little below, lower middle half of the pack. They're also, in particular, by DVOA in the bottom 4 in covering wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2s. They're actually really good at recovering like tertiary receivers. But the top 2 receivers, they're really good. So maybe not. We have like a really dynamic Watson and Dobbs. We can really take advantage of that weakness. And part of that, I think, is maybe Ramsey's been struggling a little bit for him lately. So he had really good weeks early in like 2 and 3 of the year. And then he's been slightly above or slightly below average in coverage by PFF later in the season. In fact, 3 of his last 5 games have seen below average coverage grades. Although his tackling is still good. It's the team's a good tackling team, so their coverage of top receivers has been generally poor, and so something that's exploitable, I think.
Yeah, and the other things that I have, and just in terms of they kind of tie into the passing game, I mean, if Aaron Donald is out, it just changes the entire calculus of their defense. They're already kind of an pass rushing team just based on PFF grades, but which they do with those as you will, but just another data point. And if he's not out there, I mean, it's pretty much I think it's just Leonard Floyd in terms of people who are really a decent threat to rush the passer. I mean, beyond that, you're looking at their depth chart, and Greg Gaines more of a run stopper. Behind Aaron Donald, the depth chart is a guy named Michael Hecht, who I've never heard. I'm not familiar with. I mean, they do have Bobby Wagner in the middle of the field that maybe they'll send on a few more blitzes if Aaron Donald's not playing. But if he's not playing, I don't see how they put enough pressure on Rodgers to really slow down this passing game. And then beyond that, on the other side of the ball, the Rams O-line is very bad, especially at pass blocking. PFF has them as the 29th in pass blocking, 18th in run blocking. All this, and they may not even have their starting center. He didn't practice on Thursday. And then Baker, meanwhile, per PFF, is the 23rd graded passer under pressure, and opponents are converting a league-high 29% of their pressures into sacks against him. It's a bad offensive line. It's a quarterback who takes a lot of sacks. It's a quarterback who is not very good under pressure. It should be a field day for the Packers' front line. It should be a get-right game for them, coming off a bye. They need to step up in this game, and they should have the opportunity to. What did you have as ways the Packers could take advantage of the Rams, though?
So the other thing you have is that, as you mentioned, their the Packers' offensive line is 4th by pass block win rate. So I think they'll definitely, especially if Donald can't play, then they'll be able to handle, I think, the Rams' pass rush pretty well, which will give lots of time to attack downfield to some deep shots against the receivers and get some explosive plays. On defense, as you mentioned, the Rams' offensive line has been a mess this year. And so I think there's going to be the opportunity to force Baker Mayfield into mistakes. And as you mentioned, we got 4 picks off of him last year.
He threw 4 or 5 or 6 of them. We might have only converted 4 of them, but he threw a bunch of them last year.
Have our defenders catch some of those. So I expect actually some blitzes.
I need the corners on the jugs machine on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday leading up to this game. They better catch the ones thrown at them.
So I expect him to throw some extra blitzers in there. Quay Walker, Adrian Amos, or a corner blitz. And I think
here's
they can
my
afford
question.
to take some of these risks.
Here's my question. Do you expect them to, or do you want them to? It's two very, very different things. Do you think Joe Barry's actually going to do it?
They have been mixing in some extra pass rushers lately, I would say, in the last 5 or 6 weeks. I think they haven't been just going with rushing with the front. I think they sent Quay on a number of times. They've sent in some a few safety blitzes. And I think in this game they can afford to take these risks because the Rams have just not gotten much in the passing game to either tight ends or running back. So if you send the linebacker or the safety on a blitz, I think you're not as exposed as much for pass catchers in the center of the field. And although because Higbee, I think he's the tight end right now, right? He's been having to stay in and help block and has not had a very good year. And Akers, even though he's running the ball well, he gets almost no passing work. He's got four catches on the entire year. Mm-hmm. And he's been their primary running back lately. So I think you can take a few risks sending an extra linebacker in a blitz because they don't threaten the middle of the field with running backs and tight ends very much.
And I do think that maybe they would blitz Walker more if Campbell had been playing the whole season. I think part of that is they wanted one of the linebackers they trust actually playing linebacker at all times. But with Campbell back, maybe they'll be more willing to actually use Quay Walker, maybe not even as a blitzer, maybe pulling him down to the edge and letting him rotate into that edge rusher. They had been
lining him up at edge every once in a while, I think, before Campbell went down. You could see him set up on edge, and they were doing some funky alignments sometimes where they had Quay on one edge, and then they had Smith and Garvin on the other, both on the other side, and other kind of unusual alignments.
And I mean, they're desperate for edge rush, any kind of juice off the edge right now. I would not hate at all to see a dozen snaps, maybe not that many, but a decent amount of snaps for Quay at the edge rusher position, at least every third down. It's something that developing that skill this year is going to pay dividends next year, and that's kind of the main thing you should be doing right now if you're the Packers.
Yeah.
Beyond that, let's kind of start winding down a little bit. What do we want to see from the Packers in this game? Go ahead and take it away.
So you accuse me of already sneaking some of that into my what do we expect to see versus what I want to see.
Because I am skeptical about these mythical blitzes you say are on the horizon. I don't know about all that.
You think that's just a fever pipe dream?
Look at the rabbits, Lenny. Keep looking at the rabbits. Because I don't think those blitzes are coming. But anyway, what do you want to see from the Packers in this game besides blitzes?
So if Donald's in play, I want to see them establish the run again to set up the pass. As they want to do and try to get in, second and third and favorable distances. I want to see them work Dobbs and Watson in combinations, either in crossers or vertical combinations where one's deep and one's coming underneath, to see if they can help each other get open for either deep shots or yards after catch on say, a quick crosser. The other thing I'd like to see, I want to see them put a team freaking away early and coast after crushing a bad team.
I really want to
see.
I can do going up 21.
Christmas is a week away.
I can do going up 21 and then letting them sneak back in the game and making it a one-score game for the whole fourth quarter. That's the best I can do.
It's that's all you can offer me, huh?
That's kind of what they did to the Giants. They just kind of let them right back in the game right at the end and just blew it. But anyway, for me, the things that I want to see in this game, I'm going to say this. I'm probably going to regret it. They should win. They should really win. This should not. They're a better team than the Rams. They've been favored in other games,
but that they did win. But the Commanders and the Giants and the Jets
are actually good teams.
And are actually good teams. And the Rams much better than the Rams.
The Rams are a bad football team. They are 4-9. They don't have their starting quarterback. Both of their starting receivers. They're not gonna. They might not have their perennial Pro Bowler, All-Pro D tackle. They are so dinged up. They were bad when they were healthy. They have no O-line. You should beat this team. And I really want to, more than anything,
there are only a couple
see them
teams
go
in the
out
league
there
that are worse than them.
Exactly. I want to see them go out there, though, the Packers, more than anything, I want to see them play like they have something to play for, because I think this is the time of the year where it'll be really easy. We're going to see who is about it and who is not about it. We're going to see who is like, all right, I'm good. Like, we're done. We're 5-9, 5-8.
5-8. Hopefully we don't get to 5-9.
Yeah, we're 5-8. It's whatever. I'm going home. We're going 1-2-3 Cancun, as they say. I just really want to see them play like they have something to play for, because I think we're going to maybe see a few people phone it in, but I want to see the majority of the team play hard. And then I want to see them be aggressive with Baker. We talked about how their O-line is bad. We talked about Baker takes a lot of sacks. I think this could be that, because one of the things was on our wish list was one big Enagbare game. Maybe this is the one big Enagbare game. Maybe he gets a couple sacks. You never know. Coming off a bye, rookies always usually get a little bump to their production. It's kind of moving past that rookie wall. But those are kind of the things that I want to see from the Packers in this game. Do you have any last things you wanted to add, or should we move into wrapping this thing up?
Let's move on to our players to watch.
Yes.
And you kind of mentioned one of mine already, because I have Enagbare on my list. I want to see if he can really take advantage of the Rams' offensive line. I'm curious to see what he has coming off the bye and whether he can really be disruptive or not. He's been, for the season, I think, the number one rookie in pass rush win rate, or pressure. No, sorry, pressure percentage.
Okay,
per snap.
Okay, that's a real stat. That's not too much made up of a stat. That's a real stat.
Yeah. And then I also want to, and if Donald plays, I'm going to keep my eye on Jenkins.
I'm going to keep my eye on Myers. I'm going to keep my eye on Runyon. I'm going to be staring them down. I'm going to be like, please don't let this one man beat us.
And then I'm going to be keeping an eye on Dobbs. How about you?
It's going to be good to see him back.
Yeah, because he was leading the team in targets before he went out, and now Watson's been leading the team in targets. So
yeah, how is that distribution going to go? It's going to be interesting.
The offense could look completely different now.
And someone was saying, I think it was Andy Herman on Pack-A-Day, he was saying, he's like, when you actually look at the plan to replace Devontae, the only real big miss was Sammy Watkins. Like, the draft picks are hitting. Like, Christian Watson looks really good. Romeo Dobbs for a 4th-round pick looks amazing. Samori Toure is playable. That's like the most you can ask for out of a 7th-round pick. Like, they have decent options there going forward next year, which is kind of exciting to think about. For me, my players to watch, number one is Dobbs. It's going to be fun to see him back out on the field, I think. He's missed 4 games now, I think.
I think it's more. No, you're probably right. It might be it's more.
Yeah, he got hurt in the Lions game, right?
Yes.
First play?
The first play. Caught the ball.
The
got
very first offensive play. Twisted his ankle, But it's going to be good to see him. He says he feels like he's going full speed right now. He said in an interview he expects to play on Monday. So that's super exciting. And then the other one I'm excited to see is Rasul. He's got Baker twice last time. Let's see what he's got for him this time. Those are my 2 players to watch. And he had a
pick 6 against the Rams last year too.
Exactly. And then I think honorable mention. Let's see how Darnell Savage. That's actually going to be one I'm watching, because if you remember, he was benched before he got hurt. Is he going to come back?
He was coming in as the dime backer, not even the nickel.
So where is he going to be?
Where is
he going to be in the depth chart coming back? Is my question. Because
that's going to be
maybe
very
that was
interesting
just
to see what that's
a one game. Maybe it was just a 1-game benching where they weren't happy with what he had done in practice that week. Maybe it was more of a permanent thing where they're going to ride with Rudy Ford the rest of the way. I don't know, because they're stuck with Savage's 5th-year option next year either way. So maybe they try and give him another shot at it. But that's going to be my other player to watch. Let's wrap things up here, Dad, though, with our score predictions. Who you got winning this game?
So I have the Packers winning, and in the last several weeks, they've actually been one of the better scoring teams. So, like around 20. So I'm going Packers 27. I don't think the Rams can score much. So I'm giving them only 17.
Famous last words. In before 3 pick sixes, their offense doesn't even need to score.
They're bad.
For me, my score prediction is Packers 28, Rams 21. Here's the thing. Rams aren't a good football team. Packers aren't a particularly good football team either. They're going to find a way to let the Rams stay in it and come back late and keep it a 1-score game, and we're going to be a little bit stressed going to the end of the 4th quarter, but in the end, the Packers are going to end up pulling it out and pushing against the spread because good football teams win, great football teams cover. I don't think the Packers are going to cover. They're going to be right there, winning by 7.
You're not buying the Packers are just a completely different team now. The second half of the season rolling around and after the bye, all of a sudden everybody's healed.
Second half, there's four games left.
Fourth quarter. There's the first half before the bye and the second half after the bye. Maybe the halves are equal.
It's like when someone's like, there's only 2 choices. It's 50-50. There's only 2 things that can happen.
There's only 2 choices, 50-50. It's like, exactly. If somebody slices the pie into 2 slices that way, I don't think you'd call that even.
50-50. But yeah, I got Packers 28, Rams 21. I think the Packers should win. I think Dylan should have a big game again. He's been on a bit of a tear recently, and coming off a bye, I think it sets up as a good matchup for him.
There's a guy actually we didn't mention to keep an eye on. He's been playing very well. That's actually why 3 or 4 games.
That's why I mentioned him right now, because I feel like he's an important part of this offense for this week.
Yeah, and he's been showing he can carry the load, and been catching the ball a little bit better too. We'll see if the late season December Dylan it continues to be a thing.
Yeah, and maybe just build some momentum into next year because he had a bit of an off year this year. But anyway, next year we're starting 13%. A 10-game winning streak. 13%. We're right there.
So we're going to win 4 straight here. It'll be 5 straight to the end of the year, and then another. So I guess it's a 9-game win streak. We're embarking on.
Definitely, it's right there. I think it's 8 actually. Technically, it would be 8 from here on out. 4 more regular season, and then 4 more regular season, and then it would be 4 playoff games. But
right.
Anyway,
and counting the one we already won. 9-game win streak, baby.
Of course. What was I thinking? But anyway, this has been our slightly unhinged pregame for the Packers-Rams. Thanks so much for listening. We would really appreciate if you enjoyed this to subscribe to us on YouTube, Father Son Packers Podcast, or follow us on Twitter at Father Son Packers. Really help our numbers a lot. We will be doing a post-game either Monday night or Tuesday morning. We'll keep you posted depending on how our schedules look. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.